What if one of the most destructive and ruthless incarnations of Godzilla somehow got even worse? On this episode of Goji Center, we speculate on what could have happened if we blended universes and the vengeful Godzilla from -1 took a trek to the Arctic and got charged up in a similar way to its MonsterVerse counterpart. Shikishima's nightmare is about to get a whole lot worse. What if Godzilla -1 evolved? In the 2023 film Godzilla -1, we got one of very few looks at the Big G before it became so big. Shown in the opening sequence set in 1945, Godzilla was already regarded as something more than a mere giant animal by the people of Odo Island. Regarded as something uncanny and perhaps supernatural by the people of the area, this earlier state of Godzilla already showed fantastic abilities. At over 15 meters tall, some estimated scaling would put this initial form between 550 and 700 tons. Just to hold itself up at that size, let alone moving and regenerating from the nuclear blast, it did in fact require Godzilla to already be drastically tougher than any creature to ever exist. In other words, Shikishima's moment of fear saved his life. Those 20mm cannons wouldn't have done a damn thing, even with a headshot. Combined with Godzilla choosing not to attack the plane despite clearly seeing our hero and parts of the novelization fleshing out how it thinks, and it becomes very clear this is not a mere giant dinosaur. In Shintoism, the native belief system in Japan and surrounding islands, the boundary between what is natural and supernatural can be a blurry one. Under the right circumstances, places, people, and even animals can become kami, a word that can mean phenomena, spirit, or god, depending on context. This Godzilla was already uncanny. The film's director, Takashi Yamazaki, said as much. Considering the natives of Odo Island already knew of this giant beast and revered it as such, they might have been onto something. So for the remainder of this episode, you may find a clip or two of game footage from our sponsor, War Thunder. We wouldn't be promoting this if this game wasn't actually good, but it is! The most insane representation of the intensity of military vehicles, tanks, aircraft, helicopters, and ships. Literally every time we talk about this game, it only gets better. Constantly updated, each game session is an experience you'll never forget. Here you will take control of modern military tech, guided missiles, smoke screens, thermal vision, attack drones, and Godzilla-sized nuclear strikes to devastate the entire map. You can take part in epic multiplayer battles on PC, PlayStation, Xbox, and mobile. So, now there's no excuse to not take part in the best combat vehicle game of all time. Storm warning is here, ladies and gents. This new update introduces new aircraft, Eurofighter Typhoon and Rafale, M44 for ground combat, and tons more. Test these out in the new map, Attica, with this game now supporting fully realistic shadows, lighting, and reflections to make this almost indistinguishable from real life. Download for free using the link in the description, and if you haven't played yet or haven't played for more than 6 months, you'll get 100,000 in-game currency, a special decorator Eagle of Valor, and more. Yeah, we know most of you are watching on a phone. Yeah, we see you, dude. Yes, you can play now, dude. Fast forwarding in time, this Godzilla found itself caught in the blast of Operation Crossroads Baker Test. Withstanding the 23 kiloton explosion and radiation, Godzilla's regenerative ability went into overdrive trying to stabilize it. It is here where the film's novelization makes it clear that the resting giant was filled with a terrible resolve once it deduced humans were the cause of this. Now less animal and more a living curse. Things take a slightly different turn when the now 50.1 meter tall Leviathan turns northward. Maybe the vengeful Kami had sensed something in the Northern Ocean that could help with its pains. Something across the Arctic Ocean under the ice caps that would help it get its revenge. Now, in our scenario, the only element from the MonsterVerse is the energy stockpile under White Island we saw in the New Empire, so Minus won't have to square off in a David and Goliath battle with any titans like Tiamat. Taking longer than his MonsterVerse counterpart, Godzilla would still soak up nature's bounty of energy to turn it loose on mankind, becoming this. Now, this hypothetical new state wouldn't look exactly like the evolved Godzilla we know and love, as Godzilla's new look to square up with Scar King's forces was partially an adaptation of copying DNA from Tiamat and further juicing up from a modern nuclear facility. Still, the effect would be noticeable all the same. New spines, longer limbs, and a somewhat slimmed down build, and far more destructive potential. -1's infamous blast of a breath attack would take on terrifying new traits too, but we'll get back to that in a minute. And this new look also comes with a few new devastating perks, ones that would carve a path of devastation across the Pacific at an even faster rate than it had in the movie. This turbocharged Godzilla would relentlessly destroy anything it so much as got an indication of. Tellingly, there would be no warning when these attacks happened until the path of wreckage was found. No radio calls, no distress signals, and nothing but claw marks and burned slag left behind of whole warships. And with it attacking both sides with wild abandon and leaving no survivors, both superpowers might mistake Godzilla's actions for those of the other side. World War III might risk breaking out over this rampage, with multiple nations hunting the culprit and each other. With the sheer number of sea mines still left over from the last war, Shikishima and company would have plenty of work to do. This means the infamous boat attack probably happened more or less the same way it did before, only now with a faster, turbocharged Godzilla on the hunt. If they survive with a timely intervention of the Takao or other ships engaging the monster, Dr. Kenji Noda might notice something when an ominous pink glow appears underwater. A lot of the communication equipment and more advanced electronics would be going haywire. There's a destructive new trait to one of the most destructive atomic breaths ever. Now, to clear up a bit of a misconception circulating the internet, because if it's on the net, it must be true. Different types of radiation, like high-energy gamma rays, don't actually have a color. Color is just a spectrum of light we're able to see, and most high-energy radiation is way outside that spectrum. All colors are a mixture of the two opposite sides of the spectrum, blues at the highest energy and reds at the lowest. Pink is the exception. Pink-colored energy is what your brain perceives when it can't figure out what has a higher energy than blue and a lower energy than red. It's almost like your eyes are glitching. What does this mean in the case where too much pink energy is dangerous? It means a whole spectrum of electromagnetic energy and charged particles is being fired out every time. Not just with much more heat and potentially explosive force that ignites the matter around the beam, but there are also now massive EMP blasts every time Evolved -1 fires. In a modern setting, this would make the Evolved -1 borderline impossible to fight effectively, because every time it uses its breath or exerts its might, it could permanently knock out the whole power grid for miles. Radio and other important frequencies would get scrambled just from being nearby, and most advanced technology wouldn't work. The attack in Ginza would probably result in huge amounts of Japan losing power and a lot of communication equipment being made inoperable. It doesn't just turn off some types of technology, it fries it. The world's governments wouldn't stand a chance ignoring all of that. The setting being in the 1940s might be the only saving grace for the heroes faced with this kind of menace. More complex electrical transistors and grids were less common back then, and vacuum tube technology that is antique by the modern standards would hold up against EMPs a lot better. Operation Watatsumi might have to go from a desperate struggle by a small group into a national effort to use the one plan that might work to stop this nightmare. And, as the movie showed, there's no guarantee it would succeed. Killing a vengeful force of nature is not simple.